Robert the Bruce. Robert the Bruce had spent most of his life fighting. He fought England. He fought rival Scottish factions. He survived defeat, exile, and years of war before eventually becoming the king of an independent Scotland. And in 1314, he defeated a much larger English army at Bannockburn. But there was one enemy he could never defeat: his own body. By the final years of his life, Robert had become seriously ill. By 1327, one eyewitness described him as so weak that he could barely move anything except his tongue. And when he finally died at Cardross on June 7th, 1329, he was only 54. For centuries, people repeated the same explanation: leprosy. But historians have never been able to establish that with certainty. In fact, modern historical assessments point out that the evidence does not fit leprosy well, while other possible illnesses have been suggested. So after defeating armies, surviving a lifetime of war, and winning the independence he had fought for, Robert the Bruce died fighting an enemy nobody could clearly identify. And even today, we still don't know exactly what killed him. Vlad the Impaler. Few men in medieval history became as closely associated with death as Vlad the Impaler. His name became synonymous with one of the most terrifying forms of execution imaginable. But in 1476, Vlad himself became the victim. After returning to power in Wallachia, he was killed during fighting against his enemies. And that's where the story becomes strange, because the exact circumstances of his death are disputed. Some accounts say he was killed by an Ottoman assassin. Another tradition claims that Vlad's own men accidentally killed him after mistaking him for an enemy. Then came the part that sounds almost like a final punishment. His head was reportedly cut off and sent to Constantinople. But what happened to the rest of his body became another mystery. A tomb later associated with Vlad was found without his remains. The man who had become famous for deciding how other people would die left behind a death that historians still can't completely reconstruct. The Impaler had finally been killed, but history never completely found his body. Caracalla and Geta. In ancient Rome, sharing the throne with your own brother could be dangerous. Caracalla and Geta were both emperors, and neither wanted to share power. Eventually, their mother arranged a meeting where the brothers were supposed to reconcile. But when Geta arrived, soldiers loyal to Caracalla attacked him. Geta ran to his mother. He reached her arms, and there, while she tried to protect him, he was murdered. Caracalla had won. But killing his brother wasn't enough. He ordered Geta's memory to be erased. His images were removed. His name was struck from records, and thousands of people connected to him were reportedly killed in the aftermath. Caracalla now had absolute power. For 6 years, he ruled alone. Then, in 217, while campaigning in the east, Caracalla stopped during a journey. One of his own soldiers approached him and stabbed him. The emperor who had murdered his own brother for power was himself killed by one of his own men. He had eliminated his greatest rival, and eventually someone simply eliminated him. Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary, Queen of Scots, had spent 19 years imprisoned in England. Then, in 1587, her sentence finally came. Execution. She entered the room calmly. She prayed, she was blindfolded, and she placed her head on the block. The executioner raised his axe. The first blow came down. It missed her neck. The second blow did most of the work, but did not completely sever her head. The executioner had to use the axe again. Then came an almost bizarre detail. When he lifted what he thought was Mary's hair, he discovered that he was actually holding her wig. Underneath it was Mary's short gray hair. And according to one contemporary report, her little dog was later found hiding beneath her clothing. Her execution was supposed to be a quick and final act. Instead, it became a sequence of mistakes and strange details that witnesses would remember for generations. Mary's life ended on the executioner's block. But even her final moments refused to go according to plan. Grigory Rasputin, then there was Grigory Rasputin, the man who, according to the famous story, simply refused to die. In 1916, a group of conspirators decided Rasputin had to be eliminated. And the story that followed became one of the most famous assassination legends in history. First came poison, then gunshots, then more violence. And finally, according to the popular version, Rasputin was thrown into the freezing Neva River. When his body was recovered, the legend was complete. He had supposedly survived poison, survived bullets, survived a beating, only to finally drown beneath the ice. But there's a problem. The historical evidence doesn't support the complete story. The surviving autopsy account recorded multiple gunshot wounds, including a fatal close-range shot to the head. It found no evidence of poison, and it did not support the idea that Rasputin drowned. So the most terrifying part of the Rasputin story may not be that he survived everything. It may be that the legendary story of how he died was itself exaggerated. The man became famous as someone who could not be killed, but the truth may be far less supernatural and far more human.